This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and on the line tonight I have none other than former WWE and NWA superstar, Portland wrestling legend, Billy Jack Haynes. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hannibal, it's always an honor to talk to you, man. And I want to say WWE, I want to say with me WWF, because I'm old school, man.
Yeah, and now UFC has taken over. They've been WWE has been bought by the company that owns UFC. I don't know if you heard about that. So who knows what they're going to be called next?
Well, I did hear about that, and I know Dana White is involved in that, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about tonight at the end. And I kind of want to bring you up to speed on something I never thought I would reach 75, but here I am in great health. And in fact, I just ran today 25 stairs without stopping, and my weight's at 220. No steroids since 87, no drugs for 8 months, and the cleanest I've been since 1987. So I'm happy about all that.
Yeah, 8 months is pretty good, and that was opiates, which you talked about the last time. That's actually excellent. That's one of the toughest ones to kick, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's extremely hard. You know, once you're an opiate addict, and it actually happened in January of 1987. I never got into taking any drugs. You know, when you're a kid, you experiment with marijuana or alcohol. I was always in the gym, working out, boxing, working out with the weights and so forth. And it's just something that happened in the injury when I was wrestling Harley race in January of 87. I think it was in the Boston Garden. It was on YouTube, but I think they took it off. You can see the injury. I fell out of the ring after Harley headbutted me. I went out of the ring and I hit the edge of the stair, those 200-pound steel stairs with my lower back, and it paralyzed me. I had to have surgery 2008 in Portland.
Jesus. Well, the main reason you wanted to talk to me tonight, and I'll get into that first, is you were a little upset about this picture that Ric Flair put out of him and I don't know who this woman is, maybe his fifth wife or someone else, with Mongo McMichael, who looks practically dead in the picture, with the tubes in his neck and so forth, and Ric Flair with the big smile.
So you've seen the picture today?
I saw the picture after you told me about it, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad you... Well, listen, yeah, it did upset me very much because I think everybody in pro wrestling knows by now that, you know, I have tried to locate my real blood father, but the father who raised me as a baby is my real father, will always be my real father, 100 billion gazillion %. I loved him with all my heart, and he was always there for me. He was a juvenile diabetic, and he went blind totally when I was 23. So, you know, I stayed with him till 29, and when I did finally get into Portland wrestling. But the story that I want to tell you real quickly, you know, I probably won't be very quickly, because I was going to keep this the secret till I went to my grave, until I seen this picture, because it reminded me of my father on his deathbed, the last 3 days of his life, with a tube in his throat. And it looks like McMichael is nearing death. And it was a bad reminder when I seen Ric Flair's smiling ass grin with his arm around, I guess, I think it was probably McMichael's wife or girlfriend. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It was a very bad choice, very bad taste. So it brought up the NWA to me back in 1984. So we'll jump from Portland wrestling to when I went to Florida in 84 to wrestle and also to transport drugs. But can I go ahead and just start talking about it?
Yeah. Yeah, you can just go ahead and say the story.
Okay. I have nothing in front of me, so this is coming from my heart, my brain, and my memory, because I was going to let Ric Flair have a slide on this, but I've decided not to after I seen this, because it did remind me of my father. 1984, when I went to Florida, Eddie Graham highly recruited me from Portland. At the time, now we know pro wrestling is all work, but back then, you know, the good guys and the bad guys, the protocol was to stay away from each other. I mean, that's just the way it was. It wasn't like it is now. Good guys and bad guys could be seen, you know, drinking or whatever. But back then, it was strictly, you know, babyface, one room, heel the other.
Yeah.
When Eddie recruited me, Hannibal, Bill Apter and George Neapolitano picked up on it right away, because, you know, I could work. I was trained by Dynamite Kid. I wasn't even getting to pro wrestling. I went down to Calgary for a totally different reason. But Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith took interest in me, and I became a pro wrestler there. And then shortly after Portland wrestling, then in '84, I went to Florida. Eddie Graham recruited me. About it was May. I was on, I think, 10 front cover magazines, and so Neapolitano and Bill Apter were really pushing me. And there you get the jealousy factor. That's why I got in all the fights down there with, you know, Barry Windham, and, you know, it's just stuff like that happens in the business, you know, because it's a work.
Yeah.
And the jealousy factor took in. And then they put the belt on me, the Florida belt from Kendo Nagasaki. I think it was the second month I was there, first month. And then, Billy Graham and I worked a big angle for the Full Nelson versus Full Nelson in Miami. Prior to that, Kerry and I were on a front cover magazine, and people can look up, says, who's the next superstar of the 1980s, Kerry Von Erich or Billy Jack? And that's on the front cover magazine. And they decided to put the belt on Kerry Von Erich first. So he only had it a month. Yeah, he won it in Texas, and then he dropped it a month later in Japan due to, I guess, he lost the belt literally, or he was, God bless him, you know, on drugs. And I don't know. I just always got along with him, and he was a great worker. But he, you know, his dad, to me, you know, pushed all those kids so damn hard that they wanted to be the superstars, and they were. But they just couldn't stay away from the drugs at that time. So they took the belt off him. So then it was my turn. Harley Race, I had wrestled several times in Florida, and Ric Flair. Non-title bout with Flair. And Harley had told me that, you know, I'm going to be the next NWA World Champion. And what happened after that was the Miami Big Show. Outdoors, Full Nelson versus Full Nelson with Billy Graham and myself. Front cover magazine, where I hit a pumper when I juiced, and I got Billy in the Full Nelson, and we worked it really good. And he put me over with the Full Nelson in Miami with about 40,000 people, and Don Shula was the timekeeper. It was a big event, but nobody got paid for a month. And what happened, and this is what right from Eddie Graham told me, that Dusty Rhodes took off with 3/4 of the gate. And then already had it pre-planned that he was going to go to Jim Crockett Jr. in the Carolinas. And so everybody after that show, pretty much, except myself and a few other guys, left with Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham. They all went to left the Florida Championship Wrestling to go to the Crockett promotion in the Carolinas, and left Eddie with nothing. So I was still doing my thing. I wasn't going to leave, but Eddie was extremely depressed. And so he told me to just, you know, get out. Just get out. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't leave him like that. I love the man. And also Mike Graham. And finally, I think it was in November. I went to the WWF, and I went down there for 1 or 2 shows. Vince had promoted me, and you seen that thing on the horse when the horse bit me in the what?
Yeah, with Vince. Yeah.
Yeah. And Vince McMahon started laughing, and I was down there, and I went to a show in Chicago, Illinois, and they were trying to promote a big guy named Kevin Duckworth, who ended up playing for the Portland Trailblazers. And you can look him up. He's 7 foot tall, about 300 pounds, to be a professional wrestler. He was an African American, just a great athlete, and became a very good friend of mine here in Portland because he played in the NBA for the Portland Trailblazers. And that's another story in itself that I can't get into tonight. But that was in Chicago. And I also met somebody else there that I will talk to you later about, you'll hear about. But it lasted very shortly. I wrestled one match with one of the Valiant brothers, and I guess I put him in the full Nelson too hard, and he got pissed off about it. So from there, Eddie said, look, just leave that. I got you set up to go to what was it in Texas called? For the
World Class Championship Wrestling.
Okay, that's where I went. So I went to World Class Championship Wrestling. And I went there in the first week of January. And I didn't want to leave Eddie because I ended up going back to Florida, and he told me that the father, Fritz Von Erich, wanted me down there. So when I went down there, he said that he wanted me to change my name to Billy Von Erich. I said, I'm not going to be Billy Von Erich. I'm Billy Jack. I've got my name already set in stone, and I'm supposed to be the NWA champion. And he said, well, I don't know if that's ever going to happen or not. My son had it, and they took it off him. And Von Erich, Fritz Von Erich and I got into a pretty heated exchange. Then in the Dallas Sportatorium, Mike Von Erich and I were wrestling Jake the Snake Roberts and somebody else. And after the match was over, it was just a horrific match. And, anybody can work with Jake the Snake. He's one of the greatest workers in pro wrestling history. But Mike Von Erich, was just pushed too soon, as was Chris Von Erich. And I was getting ready to get out of there, and all of a sudden, who arrived? Tom Laughlin, the real Billy Jack. The movie that's why I became Billy Jack Haynes, or really Billy Jack, because I love the movie so much, Billy Jack. And Tom Laughlin arrives with his wife in Dallas and tells me that I have to give up the Billy Jack name because she's copywritten it, the movie. So he was very nice, and so was his wife. He's passed away. Both of them have now. God bless them. And I said, well, can I use the name Billy Jack Haynes? Do you mind that? And he said, no, that's okay, just not Billy Jack. I said, okay. We shook hands, and everything was okay. But I later found out that Fritz had tipped him off and tried to, to make me become Billy Von Erich. So I told him to go fuck himself. And pardon my language, I'm trying not to cuss here. Because when I get to the finish of this interview, I think people will understand where I'm coming from. Because they all know by now pro wrestling is all a work. And the promoters tell you what to do, what not to do. So when Dusty took the crew and went to the Carolinas, Jim Crockett was the president. Jim Crockett Jr. was the president of the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance. I was next in line to become the NWA heavyweight champion. So in 1985, I left and went back to Portland, Oregon. I talked to Harley Race. Harley told me that they had already prearranged for me to win the title in Portland, Oregon. It was May 21st, 1985, in the Memorial Coliseum in Portland. And there was almost 14,000 fans, which was a record. And what happened was it was on Saturday with Portland Wrestling. We did the last promo, and I did this here big interview, and they showed a video of me running, getting in shape, lifting weights. And come Monday, Don Owen and Sandy Barr called me and told me that the finish had been changed by Jim Crockett Jr. Because of Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. Didn't want to drop the belt to me. And so Don Owen was irate because for 60 years in Portland, there had never been an NWA World Champion with him and his dad, Herb Owen. And Sandy just said, look, when you get in the ring, go about 10 minutes and just knock his ass out. Put the full Nelson on him, and I'll just ring the bell, and you win the belt. And I thought about it. Hannibal, and, you know, I had plenty of money at the time, and my dad was at front row because I got into wrestling for him, so, you know, he could be proud of his son. And the beast in me wanted to do it, but the professionalism, I didn't. So we went I think it was an hour Broadway. At the end, I put the full Nelson on him, and he kept telling me, Sandy Barr, it's on the YouTube, you can see part of it. But Sandy wanted me to just knock Flair out. And I thought about it, but I didn't do it. So after I seen his picture, it reminded me of something I kept inside for a long time. After the match was over, I went in, and Flair said, good match. You know how you do after a match? Hey, good match. You did this, did that. And I shook his hand, didn't say anything to him. So after I showered, went and took my dad home, so forth, I got to thinking about it, and I drove to the hotel where Flair was at. I thought, because I had been thinking about this, you know, and I said, you know, I'm through with pro wrestling, you know. You know, Harley was, to me, one of my greatest idols in pro wrestling, and he was extremely pissed off about it, especially the move that Dusty did on Eddie Graham to leave him and take everybody out and go to the Carolinas. So Jim Crockett Jr., Dusty Rhodes, and Ric Flair battled against me. Well, guys like, you know, Harley Race really was disappointed. Don Owens was disappointed. Sandy Barr was disappointed. And so was I, because I wanted my dad to be happy, even though it's all work. So I went back and I went to Ric Flair's hotel, and the door was popped open a little bit. I went in there with the idea to talk to him and beat the fuck out of him. That's what back then, that was me. I mean, people have to understand where I come from. You know, I was molested at 3.5, 10, extremely brought up in an extremely rough atmosphere, gangs, you name it, government, everything. So I was going to go in there and literally maybe even beat him to death. I don't know where my head was that night, because I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at all. And I go in there, and here's Flair in there with two girls. As my life is here talking to you now, they could have been 13, 14, or 15. And he was completely naked, and it's been told by everybody that Flair has a pretty, you know what, big thing down there. So I looked at him, and he was drunk, and he was having sex with one girl, and the other girl was there watching. And I said to myself, you know, what the... I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to do. So I called him out on it. He goes, Billy Jack, man, God, damn great match, man. Drunk as a skunk. And I didn't know what to do. So if I would have thought it over again, I would have went in and just literally taken him out. Because I know what it's like to be abused, man. And so I left. And I kept this to myself until I seen that picture. Till I seen that picture of Ric Flair smiling. He's got that big of an ego to to actually smile on a guy's deathbed that reminded me of my father, my blind father, 3 days before he died. And that's why I'm saying this now. So I'm going to go on and tell you this right now, Hannibal. I love you like you were my son. I've told you this several times. You're one of the top talents that should have made it in this pro wrestling industry if it wasn't for the hepatitis C bullshit. And you would have been a superstar in this industry. But I will call him Nature Boy Ric Flair. In the last 39 years that happened, say 38 and a half years ago, I call him pedophile Ric Flair. That's what I'm going to call him, pedophile Ric Flair. And I want all the women under 16 to come forward that this pedophile has been with. Because that's what Ric Flair is. He's an egotistical pedophile who showed no compassion for a man, Mondo McMichael, who's the Super Bowl champion in 1985 with the Chicago Bears, on his deathbed to smile with probably his wife or girlfriend and then have the nuts to post it himself, then take it down after everybody bitched about it. So when I seen that, I said, I'm not taking this secret to my grave with me. So when you brought up the fact that Dana White bought into the WWE with Vince McMahon, I want to challenge the pedophile Ric Flair to a 1-minute round with UFC gloves to a finish. It would be a big draw, and if he's got enough balls, he came out of retirement to wrestle one time already. I'm 70 in July, he's 73, whatever the hell he is, it doesn't matter. But I will go to my grave calling him a chicken shit if he doesn't do it, and a pedophile Ric Flair, not Nature Boy. So that's a fact. And any woman that's been with this man under 16 should come forward. Because that's what Ric Flair is, a pedophile.
How did you know the age of this woman?
I did not know the age, but I can tell the difference between a 13, 14, 15-year-old and a 21 or 18-year-old Hannibal. These were young kids. These were young kids. These were definitely under 16. So that's a fact. And
what was your reaction when you saw that?
Well, at first it's been a long time ago, but I wanted to go in and he was so drunk. I don't know if he knew what he was doing, but you have to know what you're doing. He knew he was with young girls. It's not the first time. So just anybody who's been with him should come forward. But like I say, Billy Jack Haynes is calling Ric Flair pedophile Ric Flair, not Nature Boy. So his ego, yesterday when I seen that picture, put me over the top and took a 38-year secret that I kept, and now I'm telling you about.
Is it true? Like, I mean, I've seen a documentary where he talks about how much he drank. He drinks almost as if it's something to brag about, that like he would drink so much for all those years. Did you witness him drinking all the time? And do you think if this was the case, that he may have just been too drunk to realize?
Absolutely not, Hannibal. Listen, Ric Flair was probably at the time when I wrestled him, I think I was, for that world title, I was 31. I think he was 34. Now, if you don't know the difference between a 13, 14, or 15-year-old at that age, you're really screwed up in the head. So, no Nature Boy, Billy Jack Haynes, and people can say what they want about me, but I tell the truth. Anybody can look it up. It's just a fact. May 21st, 1985, he wouldn't drop the belt to me. 84, they all left for the Carolinas. They all went to Jim Crockett Jr., who was the president of the NWA. It's not sour grapes. It was just my turn, and it changed my whole professional wrestling career. And it took me off into the WWF and the WrestleMania 3, which is great, but it's just a point that I wanted to bring that up after I saw that picture, and I want the fans to really know what this guy's about. And if, he doesn't want to fight me at UFC now that Dana White's involved in this, I'm in tremendous shape. I don't know what kind of shape he's in, but I'm ready.
I don't. He was at the WWE Hall of Fame, and he looked like he could barely get in the ring. He looked to be really struggling just to get his leg through the ropes. So I don't know if he would take you up on that.
Hannibal, people might think this is funny, but it's not funny to me. And
I don't think anyone's saying it's funny.
Understand? I wrestled the guy 20 times in my career at least, and it's just the fact that this picture yesterday with him with McMichael, a Super Bowl champion, looking to me like my dad did near death, just put me over the edge. So I want Ric Flair to go out as pedophile Ric Flair. There's no jealousy involved, nothing. I could work as good or better than Flair. It's all work who they put that belt on. He lost. He says, you get to be the man, you got to beat the man. Well, try me in a shoot, you piece of shit. Pedophile Ric Flair. Try me in a shoot with just your fist.
I don't think he would dare, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what I want to tell you about, man. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And people can say or think what they want. But he'll go down in history with me 100% as a pedophile Ric Flair. And the fans can understand it or not understand it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm telling the truth. And he knows it. It's not the first time he's been with underage girls. He knows that. It's been rumored many times, but I've seen it firsthand myself. And I'm just not a rat. I said, if I'm going to make it to 70, maybe I might say something, maybe I might not. But after I seen the photo, that reminded me of my father on his deathbed, and it was very bad taste on Ric Flair. So, hey, he deserves what he reached what he shows. Pedophile Ric Flair, not the Nature Boy. Pedophile Ric Flair. You don't like it? Come see me, asshole. You're a pedophile.
Well, you got that. You got that out of your system. I just have a random question for you. I saw a picture of you with Kevin Sullivan's wife, Woman, who ended up getting murdered by Chris Benoit. Did she manage you at one point?
No.
Okay.
No.
There's a picture of you and Woman and another girl. They're in bikinis.
Was that in a? That was in my Lincoln what was it? Pontiac with the T-tops down. Pontiac Firebird, right?
No, it's you. You're have your shirt off and the hat, and they're in bikinis. So, I don't know.
I don't know, but I know they were over 18.
Yeah, and this was when Woman was still in her prime, Nancy Sullivan. But you talked about Billy Graham. We were just looking at his health update. He's been struggling with a lot of health issues lately, but he's still alive after over 3 months in the hospital. You had a great feud with him in Florida, didn't you?
Yeah, Hannibal. We worked a great angle where he broke my hand, in work. And when Gordon Soley was there, Gordon was just the greatest announcer, I think, of all time, in my opinion. And he announced that, and yeah, he broke my hand, but you couldn't quite see it because one-man gang came out, and then Oliver Humperdinck got right in the way of it as Billy broke the table and took one of the legs to the table and hit me in the hand, and it was kind of blocked by the late Oliver Humperdinck, great guy. Oliver Humperdinck, and but yeah, we worked at Full Nelson versus Full Nelson, and I hit a pumper, and it's on, like I say, the front page of Bill Apter's magazine, and I was bleeding so bad, it's all over the back of Billy's head, and my head was just, I had to stitch it up myself. It was over-unders, about 20 over-under stitches, but yeah, I love Billy Graham, and I ask you every time I talk to you about Billy, and what a fighter he is, huh, Hannibal?
Oh yeah, he's a survivor. He actually boxed in Madison Square Garden. A lot of people don't know that. He didn't have much training, but he did it.
Oh, Billy was an all-around athlete, and a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, he played CFL too.
Schwarzenegger. I'm sorry. Go ahead, bud.
Oh, I was going to say he played CFL too. CFL football.
That was a Canadian Football League, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll never be another superstar Billy Graham. There'll never be another Harley Race. It's unfortunately the Dory Funks, Terry Funks, they're all gone now, and it's a different breed. Hey, the guys are great athletes. The women are great athletes. I'm not taking away from them at all. But we had to wrestle 340, 50 times a year, and I'm glad they just should be a union because we're actors. The art of professional wrestling is that you make it look like you're killing the guy, hurting the guy without hurting them. You end up hurting yourself. That's what happens. You know that. I mean, it's just you hurt the guys. The promoters will not use you, so you hurt yourself, making it look real. But anyway, I got that off my chest.
Was he was doing the superstar karate master gimmick when you wrestled Billy Graham, right?
Yeah. He started the kung fu fighting. That was his music intro to the ring. Like everybody was kung fu fighting.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. We had a great time back in the locker room too. Man, he's just one of a kind. I mean, bodybuilding with Schwarzenegger and the guns that he had. My goodness. I legitimately, when I was 290, had 21.5-inch arms, cut arms. And when I was in Portland, and then when I got down there, I kind of laid off the steroids a little bit to take 12-week cycle off. Then I got back on. But you can't cycle year-round. You just can't do it. And but yeah, Billy, I think he was with Schwarzenegger too, bodybuilding and so forth. And I know he's going to pass away soon, and I hope he can hang on. But we all got to go.
Yeah, he turns 80 in June. Actually, he turns 80 in June, so hopefully he can at least make 80.
I'm sure he's so tough, Hannibal. I'm sure he will. Can I say something about you?
Sure.
I want to say something so everybody hears this. In case I happen to, die or, get whacked or whatever, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I just tell it the way it is. People can believe it, not believe it, but I tell the truth. And the thing is with you, what really bothers me is that, you didn't get. It hurts me inside because I know you, pretty well, and I always, call you on your birthday or tell you happy birthday or October 16th. And you to me were the best talent that never made it in this business, that could have been world champion. And this isn't to kiss your ass. I never do that. It's just that it just didn't work out because of that duel of the butcher and the hepatitis C and so forth. But you should be a superstar even today in this industry, in the big leagues. Period. That's it.
Abdullah's actually in the news today because it's funny. A news report came out of him where he's claiming he lost all of his money in his lawsuit against me, which he didn't pay a single penny of it. And he's claiming that he can't read, even though he didn't drop out of school till he was 16. And he's claiming that his wife took all his money, when in reality, he's been cheating on his wife for the past 10 years with some other woman that he's been living with the past 10 years. So it's funny. He's trying to to get people to give him money, and people have given him almost $8,000 with this sob story. It's pretty sad.
You're talking about like
a GoFundMe. He has a GoFundMe going, trying to get people to take video.
Yeah. Well, I don't want people to get confused with this here video or this snapshot with Ric Flair and his Mondo's girlfriend, if that's who it was. It was just bad taste. Now, when I went down and seen Rip Oliver, who was one of my best friends in the business, we took a shot, but I was right next to him, and he wanted to raise money for the GoFundMe too, because his property taxes were due, and they were going to possess his house. So the Cauliflower Alley Club and Brian Blair, who is a great friend of mine, and his son was murdered, and he's going through some bad times with his back surgery and so forth, came through and paid his taxes for him, and just really took care of Rip. So Brian Blair really deserves a lot of prop, and he's just a great guy. I love him just like I love you. You're my two favorites in the business. I don't have many friends in the business. It's just it's hard to really make true friends. I heard things like Hack Sawyer and a grappler and Kevin Sullivan say things about my knee and so forth. I mean, I just wish that people would just understand. I think they do it for the attention. But, I love Brett Wayne Sawyer, Buzz Sawyer's brother. He was a great worker in Portland, treated me with nothing but respect, dignity, and my dad, great. And he made it in 1983 the most improved wrestler of the year. And in 84, I was the most improved wrestler of the year. And him and his brother were doing great. And I don't know what happened, but I think he called me a few names. It's okay. Grappler done the same thing, but he's never been nowhere. It's just a point. I don't know why the boys do this. You don't got nothing good to say, don't say nothing unless you know it's the truth. Don't make it up. It's got to be the truth. Then say it like I just said it about pedophile Ric Flair. That's true. I don't know how many more women will come forward, but I bet you there'll be a lot.
With the grappler, he might just be jealous that you were, well, other than Roddy Piper that came out of the Oregon territory, you were probably the second biggest star behind Piper.
Yeah, Piper was definitely number one. There's no question about it. Roddy and I were extremely close at long range. That'd be in the autobiography as well. I'm working on that. I want you to, touch it up. And we're talking about that. It's just a point that Roddy had the best raw talent, especially on the microphone. There was nobody could rap as good as Roddy Piper. And he was a very, very good friend of mine, close friend of mine. We lived 30 miles apart in Oregon. And he's the only pro wrestler, Hannibal, that I can almost swear to it on a Bible. I can't quite 100% say it. Never cheated on his wife. Kitty. So, I had nothing but a ton of respect for Roddy, and I sure miss him, and he died way too young.
Yeah, the last time I was talking to you, you were mentioning that he would do promos after doing coke, and you said that Hogan did that sometimes too. And I actually found one promo with there's a few with Piper that are definitely suspicious, but there's one with Danny DeVito at Madison Square Garden where his eyes are like lit up, and I'm amazed that he was able to do promos like that. But it also might explain too, like, why it seemed like he was gasping for air sometimes in between breaths when he was doing promos. But who knows?
Well, back in the 86, early part of 87, they didn't have the promos you had to do in every city. If you were a main eventer or a semi-main eventer, you had to do them, and you never got paid for them, of course, but it was just a position. You had to get up early and do them. And Hogan was definitely a big-time cokester, and you could tell every time he did his interview, he did coke before he went out there. Probably, I'm not saying every time, but probably 70%. And I think Billy Graham exposed that himself on 92. I think I was on the same video as he was on the hard copy or whatever it was. Do you remember that, 92?
Yeah, I think Hogan actually admitted it in his book. And there's actually a video that came out of him recently at an NBA game where he's all screwed up, and it's quite funny actually. But I don't know if Hogan still continued doing that into the 90s though. But in the 80s, I know Hogan had his own dressing room though, didn't he?
Yeah, he had his own dressing room, man. And
in WCW, he was a little more relaxed in his promos.
Yeah, well, when you live your gimmick 100%, and I will tell this to all the fans: once you leave the ring, and you know this, Hannibal, once you leave the ring, you got to go home to your family. You got to leave your gimmick in the locker room. You can't take it with you. And Hogan's one of these egotistical guys too that lives his gimmick 100% of his life. He wants to be Hulk Hogan. He's got to be Hulk Hogan when he wakes up, when he goes to bed, during the day. And I don't know. You have different identities, man. I just want to have, one identity. But unfortunately, pro wrestling, sometimes you have two, don't you?
That is true. There's some fans listening to this, by the way. And one of them, named Richard, is asking, how has your health been? And he says he loves you. Big fan of yours.
Well, great, man. Health is doing, back in 2013, almost died, but popped up, came back. And I think I tried to figure this out because there's I live in Portland, Oregon, and my next door neighbor is a big wrestling fan and a great guy, great family. And he knows me. And he asked me how many Portland wrestlers that are still alive. And I said to myself, that's a darn good question. And I said, well, myself, that were in the main eventers that were in Portland. I said, there's myself, Hacksaw Sawyer, and Rick Martel. And that's it. There's only 3 alive from Portland wrestling that I know of. That were really truly main eventers in the mainstream 70s and 80s, early 80s of Portland wrestling.
Wow.
So, but thank you, man, for saying that about me. I appreciate it, Mr. Fan.
There's another guy on here that says, why have you waited so many years to say something about it? And I think the reason why for the Flair thing is you're saying you're making these allegations because you got pissed off at the Mongo McMichael picture. That's why you're saying something. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, the young man is it a young man that's saying that, or a man or a woman who's saying it?
Somebody named, I think it's a man.
Okay. First of all, I would tell him, he didn't wrestle Ric Flair 2 an hour Broadway like I did. He's never been in the ring with Ric Flair like I have 20, 25 times. And he didn't witness what I witnessed and didn't go through what I went through. And so, I didn't say anything for 39 years because it's just not the way I am. It took this here picture with Mondo McMichael, reminded me of my father who died on my 40th birthday. He died July 10th, actually July 9th, about 10:50 p.m. He died. And it just reminded me because my dad was hooked up exactly like Mondo McMichael. And I seen Ric Flair smile with his arm around that woman. It reminded me of those kids that he was screwing. And like I said, from now on, I will call him pedophile Ric Flair, not Nature Boy. Now, a lot of guys aren't going to like that, but I'm telling you the truth. That's all there is to it. There's no sour grapes. Dusty left. Dusty was jealous to me. Barry was jealous to me. Magnum TA. All these guys were. I never was jealous of anybody. If anybody could outwork me, that's great. But when you're supposed to win the title, Kerry won it, and I was supposed to win it, then he up and goes to the president of the NWA, Jim Crockett Jr., to the Crockett's in Carolinas, and that left me holding the bag. So, I'm pretty pissed off about it. And then in Portland, in front of when I was supposed to win it, Harley Race told me I was supposed to win it. And then the day before on Monday, the day before the match, they say no, they're not going to drop it to me. I think anybody'd be pretty pissed about that. Then to go back and it was really honestly was going to. This me back in the day was going to beat the shit out of Flair, and I could have done it, believe me. And when I seen the two girls in there, I honestly thought I had the wrong room. Then I seen Flair in there, and he was drunk and naked. They were all naked. So I can tell the difference. Listen, I've been molested. Anybody who's been molested, and a lot of people have, don't want to admit it. I didn't want to admit it either, but I did. And you live with it forever. And I just don't want to go to my grave without just being told. You know, I see him on the commercials. That's great. I'm all for anybody who can make it in this industry. But Ric Flair, you are a pedophile. Pedophile Ric Flair, not Nature Boy. That's Billy Jack Haynes saying it. You want to do something about it? Talk to Dana White. Talk to Dana White. UFC. I've talked to you about this before. I got one good one in me, maybe two. Yeah. So I'm not done yet.
Yeah, I don't think he would stand a chance. So I don't see that happening. There's a fan on here, Roger. Speaking of how good a fighter you are, he said he wants to know if you ever lost a fight, and if yes, who was it against?
No, I'm undefeated, man. Listen, man. I had almost been beat to death. I mean, to death. Oh, at least 4 times. You know, so no, I'm not the toughest guy on the planet at all. But, you know, I was, you know, a pretty angry young man after being sexually abused like I was. And I grew up around gangsters my whole life. I had to keep it a secret, especially on the political end. And people will find out about my life very shortly. It's just a point that, you know, I started fighting at a young age, getting the crap beat out of me. That's how you learn, by getting the shit beat out of you. And pretty soon I was in there with Mike and Jerry Corey, and those guys were world-class fighters. And Andy Kendall and guys like that who beat the shit out of you, but you learn by it. You learn from your mistakes. That's the way life is. Or you run from it. I never ran from anything. I never ran from a fight in my life, ever. And, yeah, of course I've had the shit beat out of me.
That's how you get better. You were boxing top boxers, too, at one point as sparring partners. And you probably learned a lot from those experiences, too, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, and I was 13, 14, 15 when I was, you know, fighting top-notch fighters. And there was a kid named Tommy Sullivan and his brother Johnny Sullivan in Portland. And if you look up the 1975 Golden Gloves, you'll see that Tommy Sullivan beat Michael Spinks in 75 in the National Golden Gloves. In 1975, people can look it up. From Portland, Oregon, beat Michael Spinks, and then lost to him for the Olympics in '76 when Sugar Ray Leonard was in there. Lost to him on a split decision that was so bogus because you know, he was a white guy and it was an all-black team. And listen, my idol. Remember, I became Black Blood, right?
Yeah.
My idol was Sullivan Northup. He was born on my birthday, July 10th, and there's a lot of meaning there that you'll find out in the book. He was a black guy. He wrote a book called 12 Years a Slave. I want everybody to read that book. Sullivan Northup, 12 Years a Slave. Well, the same thing with the Indians. I'm a part Modoc Indian. They pretty much stole all the land from the Indians. You know, the 13 colonies on in. There was over 200 million Indians killed in Indian wars. Well, people want to forget about that. They were enslaved too. It's Indians, and so I called myself Black Blood. And there's a reason behind that people will find out. But there's not a racist bone in my body, or, you know, it's just a point in sports, basketball, NFL, black athletes are better. That's all there is to it. They're faster. They're stronger. Boxers, I mean, you name it. They are badass, man. And I give it to them, you know. But, you know, I thought, well, here's another thing that happened. On my 29th birthday, now that we're talking about boxing, and this is probably going to rattle the cage of The Rock, the biggest name, Dwayne Johnson. When I was, you know, selling cocaine out of the Stone Pony in Portland, Oregon, the wrestlers would come over. It was on my 29th birthday, July 10th. It's a Portland Sports Arena. I'll never forget it. Rocky Johnson, Rip Oliver, Chris Adams, and Playboy Buddy Rose came to the Stone Pony to buy something from me. And Rocky Johnson mentioned the fact about, because I had been to the sports arena before, and they had seen me, mentioned something about boxing and said he had sparred with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. I said, wow, that's pretty good, man. He goes, I heard you was a pretty good boxer. I said, yeah, I've been around. I just turned 29. This is right before I went down there to Calgary, about a month, something like that. So Rocky Johnson says, you care if we sparred around? I said, anytime you want to, man. And that's when I was weighing 290. I was running stairs. I mean, I was in such great shape. And going to the gym and, you know, working out, the heavy bag, speed bag. I mean, I was all ready to go. So he tells me, well, how about tomorrow? So I said, you got it. So I called up a guy named Ed Milberger, and people can look him up on the internet, Ed Milberger. He trained the Olympic team in 1980 because Sarge Johnson was killed in a plane crash. So he was I think he was the Olympic coach for boxing in 1980 at the Olympics. And so we went down to the Mount Scott Community Center, Rocky Johnson and I did. And he said, do you want to wear headgear? I said, no, I don't need no headgear. So it was Ed Milberger, who was a trainer, opened up Mount Scott Community Center. And then Andy Kendall, who was a light heavyweight champion, #1 ranked. I called him up and he went down. They're all dead. So there's no witnesses to this except maybe one guy. And that was a maintenance guy. And I could maybe find him. So he said, what ounce gloves you want to use? I said, I don't know. You want to use this? Because I didn't like him. I didn't like Rocky Johnson. To me, he was a pure asshole, and I know he's passed away. But, you know, he treated me like an asshole, so I'm going to call him an asshole. And I already told you I'm not a racist. Don't matter to me if you're white or black. Just don't treat me fair. So we decided to put on 8-ounce gloves, which are official 8-ounce fight gloves that you use in a heavyweight fight. And within, I'd say, 2 minutes, I knocked him down, let him get up. Then I took him in the corner, and I beat him till he went down and did not get up for the 10 count. And he told me to please never tell anybody that. Well, now you brought boxing up. That brought me back when I brought up 12 Years a Slave with Solomon Northup, the black guy that I idolized. So it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I've had my ass kicked, but Rocky Johnson, to me, was a smart ass, and I never liked him. So I'm sure The Rock may have something to say about that. Maybe he wants to go in UFC.
I think
1 minute rounds.
I think The Rock had up and down relationship with his father that was stable by the end. I interviewed Rocky Johnson shortly before he passed away, and he said that The Rock basically had him on a $300,000 a year payroll. And he lived on The Rock's property and stuff, but their relationship was up and down over the years. But you have a fan on here that says he thinks you should have been Intercontinental Champion. He was pissed when you disappeared from WWE, and he loved WrestleMania 3. Thank you. He just wanted that comment.
That brings up another Vince McMahon episode, Vincent Killer McMahon, I call him. Anyway, I was supposed to wrestle Randy Savage in WrestleMania 3. We had worked several angles, and it was Ricky Steamboat that went behind my back and went to Vince and convinced him to work an angle. And I could have fought it if I wanted to, but they put me with Hercules, who.
There is a great promo of just to say it, just to confirm. I saw recently a great promo that Randy Savage did on you. One of his best promos.
Huh, I don't.
It's on
I know
YouTube.
we wrestled together many times. We were gonna work in. He was gonna drop the Intercontinental title to me. But I never was an ass kiss. So Ricky Steamboat was an ass kiss. So that's the way it was. That's the way I saw it. That's the way I see it. That's not my style. Only when I see something like I seen Ric Flair do yesterday, that brought this out in me, brought this demon out in me. And there's a lot of ass kisses in this business. You were a promoter.
Oh, this whole business has always been about ass kissing, and the best politicians get the pushes and the jobs. I think Triple H is the best politician in the history of wrestling, though. But
yeah,
he made it all the way into the family.
I never met him. I never met Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Somebody named Craig is asking, you wrestled the Memphis territory. What did you ever hear the story about Lawler there? What the allegations were about the underage girls? They seem to those allegations seem to disappear, but he was forced out of the WWE for a while due to that.
I think it was Honky Tonk Man. Isn't he related to Jerry Lawler?
He's a cousin, yeah.
I think he told me about it. I didn't know anything about it. But I know one thing for sure, that he didn't ever want to wrestle me. I wrestled him one time, and he gave me a shop, and it almost took my throat out. And that's when I first got there. He had a match with me, and so I took him down. It wasn't a TV match. I said, you do that again, I'll rip your fucking eye out. And then his son, I think it was Brian Christopher, who ended up hanging himself, correct? In jail?
In jail, yeah.
Okay, well, he was so jealous of Brian Christopher, and I didn't even know they were related until that Louisville match, when I heard him say they would take my knee out. So it's just, guys they're funny in the business. You got to be careful, because you're giving your life absolutely giving your life to your opponent in the ring. If you're laying there and guys come up the top rope, they could take their knee and crush your larynx and kill you, like Rey Mysterio accidentally did. He killed the guy in the ring. And what's going to happen? No murder is done by accident. You get away with it. So you can get killed in that ring. It's very dangerous. You know that. And so I just took it back to the locker room, man, and handled it myself that way. Like with Mike Sharp is a very good example. Everybody says he was stiff, but no, he had a point to prove with me that night. And I don't know why he did it, but like people say, he was a great guy. He was a damn nice guy, but that night something must have clicked in him, because he really he potatoed me about 8 times in a row, and that was it.
Now, you mentioned in this, you worked the Florida territory. I just had a question for you. I watched a documentary the other day on the internet about how dangerous Miami was in the 80s and late 70s because of all the crazy cocaine trafficking that was going on there. It was like the most dangerous place in the U.S. at one point. What was your experience with that side of Miami, if you ever saw it?
Well, I lived it. I was a loner, which you have to be, because if you work with a partner, they can rat on you. So I was pulled over. Miami was obviously the cocaine capital of the world. And we wrestled there every Wednesday. We did TV in Tampa, then we had to drive to Miami. and every day, every city that I was in, I delivered. So, you know, I was the main guy. I was out of the Bahamas. We wrestled in the Bahamas every 4 to 6 weeks, in Nassau and Freeport, and that's where the cocaine came in for us in Florida, for me. And yeah, Miami was. I will say this: there was a guy that didn't pay a debt, and they ended up. I think they killed all of his children, beheaded his wife. I mean, it's a very dangerous game, so you can't come up short. And so that's why I went solo, and I'm not proud of the fact. I'm not bragging about it. It's just part of my life. It started in Portland, and it ended in 1987. Thank God. And there's a long story behind that after that. But
did you ever hear of this Griselda Bianco, who was like responsible for calling so many murders? She was involved in that Miami scene.
Yes, Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow. I never worked with her. You know, it was with Pablo Escobar and Barry Seal. That was my connection, and they had, I think it was a Chicago connection. I don't know, but I did obviously hear of her. I know she got busted and then went to California in prison, and that's as far as I know. And I know she got murdered in Colombia in September 3rd, 2012. I remember the day. You can look it up. September 3rd, 2012. She got executed in a drive-by. That I do know. But I never worked with her.
Okay, yeah, because she would even call for executions on kids, which I found pretty bad.
And her husband's.
Yeah, she was like she was making so much money. She was just having I think she had 12 hitmen, literally 12 hitmen, that she would just go around having people killed. But I didn't want to digress in that too much. But it sounds like Miami was just a wild place in those days.
Yeah, and then they had the group called the Miami Sound Machine with Gloria Estefan. I think came out in 84, 85. And Miami was wild back in the 80s. The Cocaine Cowboys were just absolutely wild. And as long as you were honest, man, you didn't have no problem. But boy, you try and rip somebody off back then, you were dead as a worm you stomped on. That was it. Just don't. You know, cartels and gangs, to me, I got along better than I did with anybody in my life, because that's just where my life started at 3.5. So, you know, politicians to me are more corrupt than cartels. So, hey, that's the way I look at it. Everybody looks at it from a different lens.
That is true. Someone would like to know if you could talk about the Oregon Wrestling Federation a little bit. He was a fan of it. He said he watched it every Saturday.
That's something I really never really talked about too much, because it was all a mistake. There was a corrupt commissioner. I wanted to be with. I was already a self-made millionaire at that time. And I didn't want to use any of Don Owens' guys at all. I wanted to use my guys I brought in to go against Portland Wrestling, and to make sure Vince stayed out of Portland, WWF stayed out of Portland, because Vince and I really had a big falling out, and they did stay out of Portland. But the commissioner, I didn't know, hated Sandy Barr, who was a referee, and Don Owens. He wanted him to go under. So when I became the promoter, I didn't want to do that. And so what happened is they had these like fake news. They got a lot of fake news on TV now. They did these stories, and these Catherine Dunn, and all. I never even talked to her, and they did these stories on me that, you know, Billy Jack has this fake league, and he's going against Don Owens, and that's obviously not the truth at all. I love Don Owens, would never go against him. And then at that time, I also was hooked on the Vicodin, Percocet, and then you'll read the rest in the autobiography. It's just an amazing part of my life at that time. I should have just, I made the wrong moves, but it was basically all bullshit what they wrote in the papers. I just let them do it because I was so, I guess I was such a opiate drug addict, and I had so much money, I didn't give a shit, you know. But that's on me. That's on me, man. But don't write lies and say stuff I never say. It happens all the time in this world nowadays. So people can read anything they want, but it's not the truth. It's not always the truth. Some of it is, not all of it.
Yeah, that is true. They always bend it to fit whatever narrative they want, right?
Right.
Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dark Side of the Ring TV show, but it's a popular wrestling TV show, and they announced season 4, and one of the guys they're doing the Dark Side of the Ring on is Chris Adams. So there's going to be a whole special about the dark side of Chris Adams. Do you have any insight into the dark side of Chris Adams?
Who's Chris Adams?
You married his ex-wife.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, Jeannie Clark.
Yeah.
Blossom. Listen, Chris ended up like me, you know, a strung out on drugs. You know, a lot of the boys do because it's such a tough business. You got to wrestle injured, and with Vince, he had plenty of doctors for us to go to, and a lot of guys before Vince had their own doctors to go to get drugs to kill the pain of the injuries of pro wrestling ring. What Chris did when he was straight, he was the nicest guy. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. But when he got drunk and wasted, he would beat up Jeannie. And I actually met her for the first time in Salem, Oregon. From the matches, coming back, I was driving back on I-5, and I seen her walking alongside the road, and I thought it was her, and I stopped, and I said, "Jean, is that you?" And she was beaten up a little bit, and I believe, I'm not quite sure, but I think this is what happened. I think I took her back to my place and let her stay, and then the next day, she went back with Chris. I talked to Chris about her being beaten up, and he denied it. Well, that's how the things got started, and then eventually, Jeannie and I. He went to Japan, and this people might think this is kind of I'm an asshole on this part, but maybe they may not. I don't know. He went to Japan, and then when he got back, was going to send Jeannie back to England because her visa was up. And Jeannie and I talked, and we weren't in love or anything. We were just good friends. And I says, "Listen, do you want to stay in the United States?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "We can do that. Just let's get married. Marry me, and when Chris gets back, you can stay here." And we both agreed to it. It wasn't an in-love thing or anything. It's just so we got an apartment together close to where my dad lived, and so I could still see him. And we got married. Chris comes back, and he comes in the dressing room. And starts to tell. I think he started saying something nasty to Jean. I said, "Hey, don't talk to my wife that way." I said, "Chris, don't talk to my wife that way." And he goes, "What?" That's the truth. You can talk to Jean about that. She'll tell you.
That's funny.
And that's how it was. That's the dark side of the ring with Chris Adams with me. When he was straight, he was a great guy. When he was drunk or high, total different guy, like a lot of people.
There's a fan on here that wants to know, Kevin Von Erich has the reputation, I guess, of abusing cats. Did you ever hear about that when you were in the Dallas territory? He had a thing about he really did not like cats.
No, I never heard that.
Okay.
And I like Kevin. I never met him, but maybe a couple times when I was in the world class. But always seemed like a very nice guy to me.
Somebody says they grew up watching Portland wrestling, and your heel turn is one of the best in the history of wrestling. Your heel turn in Portland.
I don't remember it. I was too high.
Somebody's asking if you think Gino Hernandez was murdered. I know he was very paranoid before he passed, but cocaine does make people paranoid. So I don't know if you have inside information on that.
I do, and it would either come out. Yeah, I don't want to say anything about that right now. There's a lot of things I won't talk about. It's just the fact that when people do read my life story and I am gone and dead and in the grave, just know it's 100% truth, and it's all backed up by facts, and it's all backed up by documents. So that's one thing that's going to be really great about this. And yeah, Gino, I really liked, but Gino went in way over his head, and that's all I can say about it.
What's the worst you've ever seen somebody freak out on drugs over the years? Because I'm sure, I know you said you were dealing it in the large amounts, but I mean, you've seen the wrestlers in the 80s were taking that stuff a lot. Did you ever see someone like really go crazy from taking too much?
You know, there's a very sad story here, and I think I will tell you about this. There's two sad stories, and it's Kurt Hennig and Playboy Buddy Rose. Now, both were, I really loved them both. And Playboy Buddy Rose became, he was a fantastic worker out of Minnesota. Both of them were from Minnesota. So many guys from Minnesota were fantastic workers. I mean, just so many. Brady Boone, one is my cousin, he's a gymnast, great worker. But Buddy got hooked on the cocaine, and I'm the one that got him hooked. And so the same as Kurt Hennig. And when they come to you, you know, same as me, when I wanted to get a Vicodin or something like that, and I know people had them, they'd say, "No, Billy, I don't want to sell it to you." I said, "Come on, man, I'll give you $10 a piece or whatever." You don't want to sell it to them, and they don't want to sell it to me, but they're going to get it somewhere else anyway, Hannibal. And so I went ahead and sold it anyway, and Buddy was into me around 20 grand, and he just could not stop. And that eventually killed him. I think he went overweight to 400 pounds, and died in his 50s. Kurt really hurts a lot, because Kurt Hennig, you know, broke in with me basically in Portland from Minnesota, the AWA. And I seen that guy go from basically, I think he was really good friends with Eddie Gilbert in the early WWF days, 82. Then he went to Portland, and he was just a skinny little kid. And I turned him on to the steroids, and then he became Mr. Perfect. And he became one of the greatest talents in the history of pro wrestling. I was so proud of him, but he just couldn't kick. He couldn't kick it, man. And I feel guilty about Buddy and Kurt, because, you know, I love them both, and they both probably died because of what I started them on, and that hurts, Hannibal. That stuff does really hurt bad, and that's the dark side of cocaine. Now, I honestly have never done cocaine in my life. You don't get high in your own supply. Scarface would tell you that. I never have done it in my life. But I've done thousands of painkillers. When I hurt my back against Harley in January of 87, and 37 years straight, I think, on and off. Maybe a couple weeks off, but always went back to it. Then got on methadone, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's been a wild ride, man. But I don't want to say that I don't have a heart and it doesn't hurt. But my heart was taken out when my dad died. 30 years, July 10th, July 9th. 30 years my dad's been dead. So my life really has little meaning to it left. And that's why when I seen that picture of Ric Flair smiling with Mondo McMichael nearing death in the background, it reminded me of my dad. So people might think I'm a prick for saying this, but I'm telling the truth about the two girls. And it's not the first time for Flair, man. I mean, he likes young girls, and he's a pedophile, not nature boy, pedophile Ric Flair. Just make sure that gets across. Billy Jack Haynes said that. And if Rick wants to do anything about it, come out of retirement. I'm ready to fight him in UFC right now. Ain't no difference to me. I'm telling the truth, and he knows it. He'll deny it, but it's the truth. And let the people come out. Let these girls come out who's been under 16, 15, has been with him. So that's it. All I can say, that's, I'm about all talked out, except for, is there any more people want to talk or have any questions? I'll answer any of them.
Someone on here wants to know, is it true you got Crush his start in wrestling? Crush Brian Adams.
Yes. He was over in the dojo in Japan when I was over there. And I seen him wrestle, and the guy just had incredible talent. And, I got a lot of guys started in pro wrestling, and, I had forgotten all about that till that was just brought up. Like there was Brady Boone from Minnesota to Portland as my cousin. Crush was Brian Adams. It got him in Portland, and he went on to the WWF like Brady. And then the other one was Ricky Vaughn. He went as Ricky Von Erich in world class. I don't know whatever happened to him, but these are all great guys. Brian also got hooked on cocaine, and there's another one I forgot about, and that's a sad story. 2007 August, I think it was August 13th, 2007. He was found dead of an overdose. So.
Yeah, he had a lot of stuff in his system too. What did he have here? He mixed the painkiller blue Perens morphine with the muscle relaxer Carzapodal and sedatives chloradipoxide and alzoparum. And I am pronouncing those wrong, but he had a shitload of muscle relaxers in him.
Did you see how many professional wrestlers who died in 2007?
No, but you are right. He did die August 13th, 2007. Good memory.
Well, I'm right on my dates, Hannibal. It's one thing that you're going to find when in this autobiography is that my IQ was extremely good when I was younger, and the organization I was with was 5 times stronger than Scientology, and it's mind control. And I snapped out of it a little bit when my dad went blind, or I don't know what would have happened. My life really could have been in a turmoil, but it's amazing if you go back to 2007, and people need to realize this and understand when I write this, when it's completed, and I have attorneys here that are working with me, but on the same day that Chris Benoit died, or they say this, they say that. Well, I'm going to tell you what happened. Not now, but on the same day, his partner, his tag team partner, also died June 24th, 2007 in Calgary. And if anybody thinks that's not a coincidence, they're not living on planet Earth.
Yeah, also, beef Wellington or something.
Hannibal, listen. There's cocaine dealing, and then there's let's see, pharmaceutical. there's two different types of dealing. There's heavy pharmaceutical, and then there's cocaine and heroin dealing in this country. And pharmaceutical is just as bad. And it's not a coincidence that they died on the same day. I can tell you that. And people should look that up. His name is Beef Wellington. Shane Bauer. And they was a great tag team in Japan. They were all over. I mean, they had 28 tours, I think, together. Mexico, everywhere. Benoit. And they were a great tag team, man. I don't know if you ever watched them.
No, but I believe it. One last question here, and we'll call it a night. Ivan wants to know why you never worked for WWC Puerto Rico, because they were really popular during the 80s, like either before or after Brody's death. I guess you just had bigger money-making opportunities before the killing.
There's a lot of insight I have to Brody, and I knew Brody, and he, for a short time, flipped over to New Japan for about, I think, one tour, and I'll tell about that, and the death, everything about him, and also there's a I met Richard Kuklinski in New Jersey, and was a paid killer. He used to kill. He's killed over 200 people, and actually Bam Bam Bigelow was the one who introduced me to him in New Jersey. And so I've met a lot of heavy duty people that he seemed like a normal guy to me. I mean, big guy, but he ended up being one of the biggest killers in the world. So you never know who you're going to meet, Hannibal. It just happens. And Bam Bam Bigelow came down to Florida, and I helped him in 84, 85. So, and look at what Bam Bam Bigelow, he also died. He died January 19th. I remember the date, 2007. He's the first Coco Samoa died January 9th, 2007. And then it was Bam Bam Bigelow, January 19th, 2007. And then it was Mike Awesome, who hung himself. I think it was February 17th, 2007. So it was 3 right in a row. And if people, I'm not looking at no books, nothing. I'm just going by the brain that I have and the memory that I have.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. He died at 45 years old due to toxic levels of cocaine mixed with anti-anxiety drugs, benzodiazepines.
Well, it's all the same thing. Wrestling, the fans really need to understand this, and the fans is what make us go and who pays us. And the fans need to know how tough of a business pro wrestling really is and how much it takes out of you to get up. Here's basically one day in a nutshell. Is you get up in the morning after you've had a 250-mile trip. You get to bed at 2, 3 in the morning, get up, try and get to the gym, work out. You got to get your gear ready, washed, begin to go. And then you get on the road about 2, get to your next destination, put your wrestling gear on, do it again, take a shower, drive all the way back home again. We were driving 2,000 miles a week or more, working 7 days a week in these small territories. Unless you had a guarantee, you're making $1,000, $1,500. And Eddie was paying me $3,000 a week. If I was making $2,000 by check, he'd make it up in $1,000. So if you get a guarantee, you're really lucky. And on top of whatever else was doing, was very good pay. But it's a cutthroat business, and I hope that the Dana White doesn't start making it a work in UFC. I don't think he'd ever do that. That's not Dana White that I don't know, but I mean, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it becomes always a shoot in UFC.
Yeah, I don't think you need to worry about that. UFC is making a ton of money these days. I don't think they're going to change. I think you just might see more UFC fighters go to WWE after their they're done fighting, or maybe there'll be some crossover when they're still fighting.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good point.
But yeah, we've gone almost an hour and a half here. You've told a lot of stories. You answered a bunch of fan questions, so I really appreciate it. And you don't have any social media. You're not on Twitter anymore or anything, right? You're keeping a low profile.
I'm just low profile until everything comes out. Just low profile, and I hope I've came across real clear. The reason I contacted you was the fact that I was so outraged about this Ric Flair photo, and it brought back the memory, as I said I was going to keep. When you've been molested, you don't want to come out and say anything, and I didn't for years, and I kept this in my mind. I didn't want to hurt Ric Flair's career, and just too late to hurt his career. He's a superstar in the business and all that, but he definitely is a pedophile. Pedophile Ric Flair, not Nature Boy. And I was an eyewitness to it. And I know the difference between a 13, 14, and 15-year-old and an 18 and 19-year-old, like Linda, and a woman was 19, I think. Kevin Sullivan's manager, woman, was 19 or 20. So I know the difference between a 19-year-old and a 15 or 13, 14-year-old. And that's who was with Ric Flair in the hotel, May 21st, 1985. Or it could have been 2 in the morning, May 22nd. I don't know. Probably was. But, he wants to deny it all he wants to. I hope if you put this out and it goes viral or anything like that, I hope women do come forward. I do. Because he don't deserve to go. He really is, man. I mean, he was a great champion, but he wasn't the greatest by any means. In my opinion, the greatest was Harley Race. Flair done the same thing every match. I mean, it's just almost identical every time I wrestled him. The same thing. Harley Race, Dory Funk, Terry Funk, they always change things up. And that's what you got to do as a world champion. You can't have the same match with everybody. And, I've watched your matches, and I know you do that too. You change things up. I pretty good, Hannibal, and you always change things up. I want to ask you one question. When you became Blood Hunter, were you thinking of black blood at all?
The black blood is a good gimmick. It's the Blood Hunter. It kind of just fell into it, and the black blood would fit good as a manager, though, for sure, or a second.
You're a great guy, man. I love you, brother.
Underrated gimmick for sure. Actually, Eric Bischoff. I don't know if you've seen this or not yet, Billy, but there's a clip online of Eric Bischoff kind of insulting the black blood character, but it was a good character. Like, for its time, it might seem a little bit. I guess they were making fun of your. It wasn't a real executioner's thing, right? It wasn't actually a real sharp sword, right? That they gave you, or what was it, an axe?
Oh, yeah. Rip Oliver's wife made it for me. No, it was real. It was heavy, man.
Oh, it was real. Okay.
Yeah.
I think they were saying it wasn't real. Okay, so that's good to know. It was real. Okay.
It was real, and I'll tell you a quick story about Eric Bischoff. When Randy Savage, in 1995, when I was leaving USWA, after I wrestled Brad Armstrong, who I loved tremendously. I had a great match with him, and you can just watch it on YouTube. When I was a heel wrestling Brad Armstrong in a Super Bowl of wrestling, August 4th, 1995, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That's probably the best match as a heel I ever had was with Brad Armstrong, and the first time I ever wrestled him. The late Brad Armstrong, the great Brad Armstrong. He should have been world champion. And but I was going upstairs to confront Hulk Hogan. because Jerry Jarrett was supposed to be the booker of WWF or WCW, and all of a sudden Hulk Hogan took over. And so I go up there with Randy Savage, and Eric Bischoff is at the bottom, like a little baby Mark, and he tries to, hey, you can't go upstairs to me, right? And I'm weighing like 280, all pretty buffed out, you know. And Randy Savage goes, "You don't fuck, you know who that is? That's Billy Judge." Oh, fuck, I'm sorry, man. That's a true story. You know, little Eric Bischoff, now he's a big shot, but, you know, I got 2 words for him, fuck him, you know. I never liked him. He always thought his shit didn't stink. And I just tell it the way I see it.
Yeah.
The way he treated me, he's just a little punk ass to me.
But for that time, like I could understand how an executioner gimmick in 2023 might seem a bit cheesy, but like in the early 90s, that was considered a good gimmick. Like it was a different time. But I guess you were also supposed to be from France, so they were making fun of that too, since obviously you probably don't speak French.
I tried to.
But with it was cool because you usually had the one-man gang coming down a lot of the time, and he was acting all crazy, and Sullivan was taking it. It was scary. Like it was a scary bunch. It never reached its potential, sadly, for you or one-man gang, who ended up leaving.
Hannibal, one-man gang. I hope he's doing well. You know, he was on the lawsuit. There was, I don't know, 60 people on the lawsuit. And I just wanted to talk about the lawsuit real quickly. The NFL won $1 billion because they had a union. Now, I started the lawsuit with Bill Kairos, and I got 40 pro wrestlers on the lawsuit. And oddly enough, you know, Roddy Piper and China were going to get on the lawsuit, and both ended up passing away prior to it. And that one always kind of shocked me. But there was 67 wrestlers, and we lost 5-4 in Supreme Court. I don't know if people even know this, but I've got all kinds of documents on that. If we had a union in pro wrestling, because we're actors, screen guild actors, there should be a union in pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
We should have insurance, everything. That's all. I wasn't after the money. I was really after to help the wrestlers get a union. And so they get hurt, they get paid when they're off, you know, like when they're injured and so forth. Because Vince is a billionaire. He can afford it. He could have kicked back $100,000, $1 million to each wrestler to help them start the business. He could have done that. I would have done it. Would you have done it if you were worth $2 billion? Throw back $1 million to the wrestlers that got you started? You know, because they work so many times a year.
I'd never be in his position. I'm not that smart, but yeah, it's sad. It's sad that guys like Billy Graham have to have GoFundMes when they've done so much, especially like a Billy Graham type. I'm not saying he has to do it for every single person, but like for the big stars that made a difference in wrestling. It's too bad with how profitable they are. They won't help some of them because they do pay for rehab, but they don't pay for people dying where medical expenses could help them live longer. So, oh well.
I got before we go, I have a question for you, and it really this I think may blow some people's minds. I don't know. But you remember X-Pac, right? X-Pac?
Yeah.
Sean
Waltman.
What's his last?
Sean Waltman.
Okay. Now, you ever do an interview with Sean? He used to follow me around when he was 9, 10 years old as a skinny little kid. I mean, he was probably 60, 70 pounds. I'm not kidding you. In Florida Championship Wrestling, he just followed me around. He just everywhere. And you always say, I'm going to be a professional wrestler. I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And of course, I would say, you can do anything you want, son. You can do anything you want. You can make it. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, there's no way. I mean, I hope so, but there's no way. But let me tell you something. But any kid or at 16, he started working out, and he became, in my opinion, one of the greatest wrestlers, almost like Dynamite Kid, in the business. And he made it so big, and I was so proud of that guy. And if you ever talk to him, mention me, will you please? Because I seen him one time in 2006. He came up to me, and we hugged. I think we started crying. I said, man, I'm so proud of you. You've made it. I mean, he was just 9 years old when I was like 30, 31 in Florida. And
well, we'll try and get this message to him. I'll try and get this as a clip, and I'll try and I don't have his number. I interviewed him once, but I'll try and pass that message along. If there's a message you want to tell him, I'll try and get it to him. If you want to say anything.
Well, Hannibal, he's the greatest story that I know in pro wrestling. As a 9-year-old that wanted to be a pro wrestler at 60 pounds, and as little as he was, by God, he made it. He made it with Scott Hall and the other big man. Who was the guy who was 7 foot tall?
Kevin Nash. And hey, and guess what? He has something else in common with us. He also had hepatitis C, and he got cured, but he had Hep C too.
You talking about Sean Waldman?
Yeah, he had it. Yeah, he ended up getting cured. Yeah.
Well, I can see why people get hepatitis C in wrestling, because when you're main event, man, we were blazing 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if his was from that. He definitely. I think he's admittedly he went through a period. He was going out with China for a time, and they were both on some heavy drugs during that time. They've talked about it. But yeah, I know he got cured, but he didn't want to talk about it publicly as much, because of course when you talk about it publicly you get shunned. But now there's real good treatments out there, so it's becoming less of a big deal.
Yeah, I remember when you and I, we did that. When we first talked, I know you didn't know much about me or anything, and I didn't really know much about you. But I always liked you, and you just reminded me of my son, And I had one kid I brought up, 7 years old, that overdosed in 2018 and died. Tore my heart out. And I want everybody to know that I have a real son that will be 49 May 2nd. And I have a granddaughter and a grandson, for real, 100%. And I have never seen them. And it had to do with the decisions that I made. And let me tell you something, to anybody who ever wants to do drug dealing or anything like that, it just shuns you away from everything. And I was wrong. I made the wrong decision. And if I could do it all over again, I would have never done it. I would have been a family man, because I always wanted to be a father. And I love them. And if they do listen to this, I love my wife. My wife has dementia. And, we're taking care of each other right now. And she's just the most precious woman that I've ever met. And just, I want people to know that I made a lot of mistakes, and don't think I'm proud of what I did, because I'm not. I'm going to be very honest about my life. It's pretty grueling, but to not ever see your family, I talk to them on the phone. It's something that you cry about a lot, and it's horrific. And I'm just so sad I made that wrong turn in life. And and I just pray to God that I'm forgiven for it. That's all. And they forgive me.
He must like you a bit because there's not that many wrestlers left from back in the day, like a fan commented, and you're one of them. So we're glad that you're still around, and your wife is happy to have you. And there's other fan questions, but I'll cut them off for tonight.
No,
and
go ahead. I'll take them, Hannibal.
Someone wants to know if you have any memories of the San Francisco Cow Palace.
It was a great place to wrestle. I think I only wrestled there once. I might be wrong, but I think I wrestled Don Morocco in the Cow Palace. And it's one of those places like you never forget. It's these old arenas that were just amazing. The new ones, like WrestleMania 3, like the Pontiac Silverdome was almost 100,000 people. And then you get into the Cow Palace, where I think it holds like 6,000 or 7,000. I think,
yeah,
if I'm right. It's like a smoke-filled boxing ring arena, and it's a different feel. Like West Palm Beach is another one, and the Eddie Graham Sports Arena, when they used to stomp on those metal rafters, it was so loud. It's an experience you never forget. But yeah, the San Francisco Cow Palace was amazing, man.
Yeah, you wrestled all over the place. You definitely had an amazing career. Is there anything you want to say to the fans to close this off? Some of them are saying, God bless you.
Well, God bless everybody. I hope if there's Ric Flair fans out there, I hope you're not too mad at me, but I'm telling you the gospel truth. And I'm telling you the truth about the NWA title and the way it went. And if you go back in the history, you'll see that Dusty Rhodes did pull out everybody and went to Jim Crockett, who was president of the NWA, and Flair went down there. They didn't want to put the belt on me after Kerry for some reason. It's just ancient history, but I wanted to make sure after I seen that photo of Ric Flair smiling with Mondo McMichael, a Super Bowl champion in 1985, and one of the guys I idolized, Jim McMahon, who really started the Bears Shuffling Crew and Walter Payton, all that stuff. To see him laying there like my dad did 3 days before he died has made me come out and say this. And it is the truth. Ric Flair can deny all he wants, but he's not the nature boy Ric Flair. Billy Jack Haynes says he's the pedophile Ric Flair. Make sure that's known. Please.
Well, you've definitely got your point across in this, so we'll leave it at that, and hopefully you can come back on again sometime and catch up with everyone. I really appreciate it, and I hope things continue to remain at least the same with your wife.
Thank you. And speaking of wife, have you heard of Jeannie Clark at all lately at all?
I haven't spoken to her recently, but I've seen her posting things. I think both of her kids are married now or with serious partners, and I see that they do activities together and stuff.
Yeah, well, she is an absolutely superwoman, and just a great woman. And I read her book, and she wrote a little bit about me in there. It was pretty nice, and just if you do see her, just tell her she's a great friend, and I just wish her nothing but the best. And I don't have no enemies, Hannibal, but unfortunately you make friends and enemies in this business because it's a work. But when you get to be a shoot, like when you're having sex with underage kids, and then the gloves come off with me because of the sexual abuse that I went through as a youngster, and especially seeing my dad die like that, fuck Flair, man. That's just it. I'm sorry I use that language. You fuck that pedophile, man. And it's all a work, but in his mind, he's the greatest of all time. And not in my book. Harley Race, the greatest of all time. And you're right there, man. You should have been.
I'm the great. I'll take my place in the interviewer category. So I'm great. But yeah, next time you come on, we'll talk more about Harley because he's a great guy, and I was lucky enough to get trained by him a little bit. I spent a couple weeks down at his wrestling school.
Oh, did you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, at 2 different times I went down there. It was a great experience.
No wonder you turned out so good.
Hey, I definitely had a lot of great trainers. Definitely a lot of great advisors as well. But
you betcha, Hannibal. Well, it's been an honor talking to you. It always is. You're just the best pro wrestling has to offer. Just keep doing what you're doing on your most views of anybody, millions and millions and millions of views. And I wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
Thanks a lot. Hope you have a great night.
Okay, God bless everybody.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe